Hello, it's Miguel. Good morning. How are you doing? So, I hope you're doing well, Emily. I'm doing just fine. In fact, I'm feeling really good today. Really good. I'm feeling really strong, really energetic. I had a good time. I went to San Luis Obispo yesterday. They had art at night where it's an event where all the various art galleries open up and people can walk around town and visit, and these shops often have food on tables and snacks and treats and things, and they've often got music playing. So I had a really enjoyable night last night, and it was good. It's good to get out of the house. I've been in the house doing all kinds of stuff, doing chores, and it's been nice to get out and have some fun. And today is the 3rd of November, 2018, and that is exciting and notable mainly because daylight savings time ends tomorrow. Tomorrow. This is the very last day of having as much sunlight as we've got. Tomorrow we fall back an hour, and that means that the day is going to be a lot shorter. And we'll have a little more sunlight in the morning, sure, but at in the evening time, the sun is going to just go down, and it's just going to be so dark. Wow, it's amazing. I'm also looking forward to visiting with friends tomorrow in Santa Barbara. I'll be visiting a friend's house Sunday afternoon, and that promises to be a good time. So I'm looking forward to that. And so this is going to be a fun weekend, an enjoyable weekend. Man, I've sure have been enjoying my weekends lately. It really is a joy to have some free time and to just sort of do what I want when I want to do it, and sort of be on my own schedule. And I don't know, it's just great to have that kind of freedom. It's scrumptious, it's luscious to have that freedom to just act however you want. And it's awesome. I tell you, life right now is so good for me. I'm just cherishing and loving every moment of it. Really, it's like a miracle. Things are so good right now, and I don't ever want them to end. I'm really loving life right now. Every day I'm just loving it, and so I'm glad. I'm glad to be living in the moment and living how I'm living. And I just don't want things to change. Things are so good for me right now. I just don't really want them to change. So anyway, I'm really pleased about that. Looking forward to the holidays. Yesterday I had, they've got the Duncan Hines or Duncan, I don't know, I'm not sure. There's a product in the stores now where you can make cake in a cup, in a mug, right? You pour the batter in and you mix it up with some water, and then you stick it in the microwave for just like a minute and 50 seconds, and then out comes this cake, basically. It's amazing how technology has changed around food. It's just, there's so many innovations, so much creativity, so much genius in today's food. And this food today produced tastes so great, right? They've got all kinds of artificial colors and flavors and whatever to enhance the properties of food and just make it so luscious. It's so awesome. And I enjoyed the cake a lot. It cost a lot of calories. It was like 350 calories, and that's just a little bit much for the small amount of cake you get. It's just like a half a mug. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. I may not eat another one, but just because it's just not calorie efficient. And it's not really nutritious. It's just white cake. It's just flour and water and baking soda. Anyway, what's been going on with me lately? I've just been doing all kinds of things. And anyway, let's start our session like we normally start it. We'll read from Mary Mackenzie's book, Peaceful Living. Let's see what that's got to say. So here's the book. Today is the 23rd. I've got my trusty pen here where I can make annotations as we go along. And today's quote is a quote by Anne Truitt. And the quote is, "I have to stay turned on all the time to meet my receptivity to what is around me totally open. Preconception is fatal to this process. Vulnerability is implicit in it, pain inevitable." That's a quote by Anne Truitt. I'll say it again because I didn't quite understand it the first time. Let's see if I can receive the meaning that this quote is trying to convey. I have to stay turned on all the time to keep my receptivity to what is around me totally open. Preconception is fatal to this process. Vulnerability is implicit in it, pain inevitable. So I think what this person is trying to say, Anne Truitt, she's trying to say that she's turned on her perception and awareness all the time to keep receptive to what other people are transmitting and be open to that. That is, be accepting to that information. And then she says preconception is fatal to this process. Yeah, so, there's this real-time receiving of information that's so valuable and interesting. And anytime you walk into a situation with sort of a preconception of what is going to happen, an anticipation of what's going to happen, you lose the openness. You start making judgments, and you also lose vulnerability. When you make assumptions, and certainly when any party makes assumptions, you're making assumptions. Vulnerability, almost the definition of vulnerability, really is it's about the acknowledgement of present moment awareness. No matter what it is, like it's a real focus on what's real. That's how I understand vulnerability. And so, yeah. And then sort of deciding beforehand how things are supposed to go. Well, again, that's like an artificial overlay on top of reality, right? What your plans are, what their plans are. If you want to be truly vulnerable, it's about just acknowledging what's going on in you and what's going on in them, with acceptance as the goal, right? Yeah. Now, interestingly, she says pain inevitable. I guess what she means by that is that, our preconceptions basically get demolished when we sort of pay attention to what's going on. And quite often, we're not 100% accurate about our intent, about our future plans and what we expect. We can only guess. Guesses only take us so far, and the longer we're in an interaction, those guesses become more and more unreliable, right? They become more and more sort of less accurate, right? And so we need to continually calibrate to make sure that our guesses are good. But anyway, having guesses at all can be a problem when it comes to vulnerability, right? Yeah. I think I'm getting it. So next is Mary Mackenzie's passage, and her passage is subtitled "Getting Past Our Hurt Feelings." Are you feeling hurt, disappointed, or angry? Often these feelings signal a need for recognition or acknowledgement. When you consider your underlying needs, you may be unable to think of a way to meet them. You may instead tell yourself that you are too needy and continue to feel uncomfortable. Try another strategy. Rather than tell yourself that you won't be able to meet your need, simply understand it. Just sit for a moment in your sadness and your desire to be acknowledged or recognized. It is okay to want these things, even if you can't think of how to accomplish them. And it's less likely that you will find a solution if you tell yourself there isn't one. Once you have empathized with your unmet need and the feelings associated with it, a solution often comes naturally. One possible way to meet a good need or meet a need for recognition and acknowledgement is to ask someone to tell you one or two reasons they enjoy working with you or enjoy you as a friend. Ask them to be specific. Ask them to tell you why they think you're fun, rather than just because you're fun. The more information you receive, the greater your sense of relief. All people need recognition and acknowledgement. Although you may feel a little embarrassed the first time you ask someone for this information, the chances are very good that the other person will enjoy this exercise as much as you do. And the thought for the day is ask at least one person today to tell you two reasons why they enjoy having you in their life. Well, I'll tell you right, as an exercise, let me just do this right now. What are two reasons that I have why I enjoy having you, Emily, in my life? That sounds like an interesting challenge. Well, first of all, number one is that you help give my life meaning. For me, I recognize I brought you into this world. I feel some responsibility for having done that. I want you to be successful in the world, and I also want you to be happy. And so, for me, that meaning it's generated by having you in the world has a lot to do with me supporting you and helping you learn to be effective in the world. And it's part of an ongoing project that I'll have for the rest of my life. And for me, that is meaningful. It's meaningful because, it was essentially my decision. Mine and your mom's decision to bring you into this world. And it's our joint responsibility to essentially follow through and help you grow and develop and pass on this gift of human life to future generations. And, that has a lot of meaning to me. And I appreciate it for that reason. So that's reason number one. And number two is a personal growth aspect. I recognize, because you see the world with fresh eyes, that you bring a new perspective to me about the world and how that perspective can help me grow. I'm using you as a lens into the world as a way to sort of figure out what's significant and important. I'm using you and your understanding as a touchstone to help me be more effective in the world. How I sort of am reflected as a person in your personality tells me about myself. And I find that very valuable. So for me, you're like a mirror. You're a mirror and a window. A mirror where I can see myself as I sort of respond to your reactions to me, and a window to a world that I'm not that familiar with, the world of younger people today. It's a world that I find valuable and interesting, and I think that can help me be a better man, or a better person. So those are the two components why I really value you in my life. Number one, you give my life meaning. Number two, you are an avenue for personal growth and self-examination. Boy, those are two powerful reasons. Yeah, those are significantly powerful reasons. These are reasons that have significant and important value to me as a person. So, wow. I blew myself away about my... I did not know that, but wow. So anyway, I did make a few notes while I was reading, and I wanted to touch on some points that came to mind. Well, first of all, Mary McKenzie says that it's okay to want these things even if you can't think of how to accomplish them, and it's less likely that you'll find a resolution if you tell yourself there isn't one. So, yeah. I think it's premature to say that we'll never achieve a certain value, that it's impossible to achieve something that they want, that we want. I mean, it might be logically impossible. I can understand that. To sort of get, say, the exact thing that you want. But I think that it's quite easy in life to get something similar to what you want, or something that approximates what you want. Even if you can't get specifically what you want, I think certainly you can satisfy needs. Like if you have a need for, say, connection with a romantic partner, maybe one person is unavailable and logically not possible, but another person might be possible. So that need for connection can still be met, even in a limited resourced universe. So I guess my counsel about this point is to not be premature in your judgments about what is or is not possible. Next thought is, Mary McKenzie talks about how once you have empathized with your unmet need and the feelings associated with it, a solution often comes naturally. And so this I find to be totally true. When I have a problem and I'm analyzing it, and I analyze it because solving the problem is important to me, my brain will work out a solution. It'll work out a path between where I am today and my goal. And, the brain just does that pretty much automatically. It sees point A, it sees point B, where I am and where I want to be, and it plots a line between the two. It comes up with ways for me to reach my goal, and that's something that the brain does naturally. David Allen, in his book Getting Things Done, calls it the natural planning model. And of course, what you have to do first is you have to visualize the end point. That is very important. It has to be something that's visualizable, something that's a positive change, some kind of material change in the world. And your body, your brain can plot a path to it and accomplishing it. There's another point that I wanted to make here. Mary McKenzie, in her passage, talks about one possible way to meet a need for recognition and acknowledgement is to ask someone to tell you 2 reasons they enjoy working with you or to enjoy you as a friend. Now, the reason I underline this is because, if you recall, she was talking about being acknowledged and recognized. And here's the point that I wanted to make. In life, everything is a projection. And what that means is that, human brains are closed off from one another because they're enclosed in skulls. We can never know what another person is truly thinking. There's never a meeting of the minds or a joining of the minds. There is an existential separation between people. And, when we have a request for understand or a need for understanding and recognition, I guess what we're asking for is just for another person to communicate that on some level they acknowledge us, right? On some level. And it's impossible to have 100% acknowledgement where 2 minds join, right? It's just not possible right now. And because of this existential separation problem. Everything is a projection, and so really it's about our own judgment, about how well another person is recognizing us or understanding us. In a way, it's a self-judgment. It's a judgment we make ourselves. And we're also guessing, right? Because what will happen is that another person will signal that they understand us. They may even try to describe reasons why they think they understand us, but they're only guessing. They're making suppositions, And, they sort of partly understand what we're going through. And it can only be that way. And we can only understand their understanding partly as well. We receive their signals of understanding, and we interpret those signals as them understanding. So there's what I'm talking about is this ambiguity and uncertainty in human relations because of just how our brains have to encode information and decode it as we communicate over a distance. And, we do the best we can as humans to communicate, and we do pretty well, and that's not to say we never have flaws or misunderstandings or miscommunications or mistransmissions, but we do okay. I mean, we've been able to develop a civilization and media and relationships to a point, and we receive positive signs of recognition and understanding on occasion. So that's great. But I did want to point out how necessarily it's an assumption. It's also a subjective judgment about how much understanding is available, or how much understanding has taken place, right? Only I decide that. Only I decide about how much understanding I think I need about a certain situation. I spoke about this, I think, yesterday a little bit. Anyway, as you can see, I think this fact of existential separation is important. And so every time I step around it, I step around it consciously. Yeah, I don't ignore it because really there's no inherent reason why people should be understanding each other at all anyway. There really isn't. I'm surprised that it happens to the degree that it happens when it does happen. Yeah. So anyway, that's something to celebrate. If you can understand what I'm saying. All right, let's move on to the next subject. Again, this is my library book, Hark, A Christmas Sampler. Yesterday and the day before, we were talking about Christmas plants and how plants have been so important to the tradition of Christmas. For example, we talked about Christmas trees yesterday, and the legend in the German legend about how that tradition was established. And then before that, we talked about the Yule log and the Norse, and also we talked about Balder the Brave getting struck by an arrow of made out of what was that wood called? Mistletoe. So anyway, today we're going to delve into another tradition that is related to Christmas, and that is gift giving. Now, what is this whole idea, this whole tradition of gift giving, that custom, the cultural tradition, and how has it been transmitted over the millennia? That's the question I'm exploring right now. And so let's address it by reading in this book a passage related to gift giving and its origins as it relates to the folklore of Christmas. So the title of the passage is called Santa Claus and Giving Gifts. And I'll just begin here and then I'll finish up here. So Santa Claus, as we know him today, is only 200 years old. Only 200 years. If you think about it, that's not very long. I mean, if you think about it, what is that? Today is 2018, and then so 1918 is 100 years. And then 1818 is 200 years ago. So it's just the beginning of the 19th century. That's how old Santa Claus is. But long before our Santa Claus, there were Christmas gift bringers. Even before that, presents were exchanged at the winter solstice festivals. Now, in my mind, winter solstice and those festivals have probably been occurring for millennia. But I'm guessing that, at least in my mind, I can visualize them happening at the turn of the first millennium, about 1000 AD. Certainly around, the little bit beyond that, around the time of the Roman Empire. So the passage goes on to say, early gift givers included the Norse god Odin, riding his 8-footed horse, Sleipnir, and the German goddess Hertha, who brought gifts of good fortune and health. At the Roman Saturnalia, the rich gave gifts to the poor, and the poor gave garlands of holly and laurel. The Jewish people celebrated Hanukkah in the winter with gifts for each of the 8 days, and the custom continues today. So, wow, even in Jewish tradition, gift giving is a thing. The 3 kings, or the wise men, or the magi, brought gifts to the baby Jesus, arriving at the stable on January 6th, or 3 Kings Day, according to tradition. Their presents were gold, the symbol of kingship, frankincense for the high priesthood, and myrrh, as a sign that Christ would be a healer. Each of the 3 kings ruled a different country. Old white-bearded Melchior was king of Nubia and Arabia. Young Caspar headed Tarsus, a city in Turkey, and Balthazar, the Black King, was lord of Ethiopia. Now, I think these elements, these details, I think, have more to do with tradition than facts, but who knows? Who knows? We're talking about a book that, is 2,000 years old. Who knows what the people who wrote it were thinking? So, okay, where the passage goes on. St. Nicholas lived in the 4th century and was a bishop in the city of Myra in Asia Minor. He was known for his kindness and his love of children. It was said that he once brought 3 murdered schoolboys back to life. The most famous story about St. Nicholas and his goodness tells how he helped out an impoverished merchant who had lost all his money. The merchant's 3 daughters were to be sold into slavery to pay his debts. Nicholas tossed a bag of gold into the window, and so the first girl was saved. He did it again for the second. When he threw in the 3rd bag, the merchant found out, and soon the story of Nicholas's generosity was all over the city. After that, anyone receiving an unexpected gift thanked the bishop. He was made a saint in AD 800 by the Eastern Church. Sinterklaas is the Dutch name for St. Nicholas. Dutch children believe that he sails over from Spain with his Moorish helper Black Peter, who climbs down chimneys carrying a sack full of presents. Sveti Miklas is a Czechoslovakian gift giver who is let down from heaven by means of a golden cord held by angels. So, wow. So look at all these different Santa Clauses. There's the Sinterklaas, the St. Nicholas, the Sveti Miklas. Fascinating how these persons are sort of all associated with Santa Claus. And, the tradition of gift giving continues. People give gifts when their birthdays, get gifts when their birthdays come around. And, there are a lot of other gift giving holidays. Valentine's Day is a gift giving holiday. Even Halloween could be a gift giving holiday, giving presents of candy to children who are dressed up in costumes. So, this whole idea of gift giving has a significant cultural is a significant cultural force. You know what I think is interesting too is how this gift giving is associated with giving as it relates to children. I mean, it's not necessarily the case. For example, there was, you know, but anyway, yeah, gift giving itself is a pretty powerful tradition. You know, and then you know what? It feels nice when you receive a gift from someone else. It feels there's something about it. You know, when I receive a gift, first of all, I feel gratitude for their kindness and generosity. You know, giving gifts is nothing is this never required. I always think of it as being sort of I don't know, kind. It's an act of kindness to give a gift, and you know, I appreciate it as much as anybody else does. Yeah, and I think in some way too, I almost think that when people give me gifts, I when they don't have to, you know, it transmits a message, right? There's a signal that's transmitted, and that signal is, you know, I care for you. I care for your well-being. I want you to be happy, and I want you to enjoy your life. And you know that signal gets transmitted, and it's appreciated. It definitely is, almost always. So anyway, let's move on to answering questions about my life, just so that. And the reason I do this, here's my Kindle. It's got a lot of questions on it in this ebook that I bought. And the reason I go through these questions is because I want to sort of express a little bit about who I am. And I'd like to help you familiarize yourself with who I am and what I like and what my experiences have been. And I'm using these questions as sort of an avenue to help make that happen. So here is the next question. Question number 206. Do other people consider you smart? And I must say that I think they do. You know? I think they do. So, you know what? And I do intentionally try to give them that impression. And I do it unintentionally too. Now, why is that the case? Well, you know, I think everyone in their own way strives to understand the world as best they can. And really that signal, you know, the transmission of the intelligence or smartness signal has to do with, you know, me taking this life situation seriously. You know, how I'm willing to exert energy in order to learn more about the life that I lead and the life of other people around me and the life of people who I love. You know, and sometimes that comes across as intelligence or smartness, and that's entirely appropriate. Okay, so question number 207. Did you ever play Twister? Yeah, I think I played it like once, maybe twice, but I think I probably really just played the game once. Number one, it's actually quite a hard game. One thing I realized, and it's you know, it's relatively fun, but it's actually very much a puzzle, and it can be fun in the right company. But what I found, I guess, was that the games were rather short, and the game was rather short, and how fun it was, it kind of depends on the people you're playing it with. And you know, it didn't really make a big impression on me, so yeah, I have played Twister but once or twice, and I think I've walked away sort of unimpressed with the game. So next question. Question number 208. Did you ever play Spin the Bottle? I don't think I have. I'm not quite sure how to play that game. Next question. 209. Do you enjoy poetry? So I have had instances of enjoying poetry. I do enjoy poetry. I enjoy writing poetry. I think I enjoy writing poetry more than I enjoy reading other people's poetry. Now, I have enjoyed reading poetry. The kind of poetry that I enjoy reading has to, often to do with romantic love or nature. Those are the poems that have the most meaning to me, the ones that relate to those subject areas. I used to go to like a poetry slam at the Core Winery in Orcutt. They have a poetry slam like once a month, and I'd go with my friend, and we'd just hang out there and listen to poetry. It was okay. Yeah. And here's the thing. I'm constantly on the lookout for good poetry. It's true. I'm constantly on the lookout for poetry that moves me emotionally, moves me intellectually, that helps me see the world in a new way. I'm con- I'm always going to bookstores and libraries and looking through the poetry section to look for a favorite poet. I haven't found a favorite poet yet. There was a time when I thought I found a favorite poet, but I just haven't found one. I would like to find a favorite poet, in fact. I thought for a time it was Robert Frost. No, I thought for a time maybe that it was Emily Dickinson. I thought that she was my favorite poet. And then there was another time when I thought that Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman, was my favorite poetry, but I haven't found my favorite poet yet. But I'm on the lookout for my favorite poet, that's for sure. It might just be me. Question number 210. Do you like pie? I love pie. Here are the pies that I love the most. I love pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie. I think I probably love those the most. I love cherry pie and apple pie, and I'm a big fan of like key lime pie and lemon meringue pie, and I love like the dark fur. What is it like? There's like a pudding. All the pudding pies I really love, and the meringues. I love those. Those are so good. Like a lemon meringue pie. Oh yeah, yeah. That's some of my favorite pie stuff right there. I love crusts like graham cracker crusts, and I also love regular pastry crusts too. So yeah, I love pie. I think pies are amazing. I also like mincemeat pie, believe it or not. Mincemeat is like raisin or dried fruit pie. It's quite good, and I highly recommend it. Question number 212. What word or phrase do you use most? Well, I probably use and, the word and the most. I don't know. What word or phrase do I use the most? I don't know, might be it. I use I don't know quite a bit, quite often. Question number 213. What word do you find most overused? Golly, that's a rough one. What word do I find that's overused? I don't have an answer to that question. Question number 214. How long does it take you to dress up and get ready for work? Well, to dress up and get ready for work, I wake up right now, I wake up at 5 a.m. And I'm at work about 8 o'clock a.m. So that's 3 hours. But I'm doing a lot in that 3 hours. I'm quite often packing a lunch, even packing a dinner, getting the car packed up with stuff that I need, maybe to go to the gym. I'm also doing my video blogging in the morning, I tend to do, and I'm cleaning up my room, cleaning up the house, and of course making myself breakfast, and then cleaning myself, doing my grooming, and taking my medications, and going through the day. So it takes about 3 hours for me to do all that stuff. Now, if I really had to get out the door quickly, I could probably do it in 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Now, here's the thing. I think there are a lot of people who could do it faster than me. Like, I can imagine when people say, it takes me an hour to get ready and out the door. I can imagine people thinking that that's a lot of time. But for me, when I'm slow in the morning, an hour goes by quickly. In fact, most of that hour, 30% of it is probably just me groggily walking around trying to figure out which direction is up. All right, next question. Question number 215. What has been the most important discovery? Well, I think the most important discovery for me, in my mind, was the discovery of the atom. And I think that, ever since Democritus and his theory of the atomic world, I think it was Democritus who came up with that idea, or at least was the first to publish it, or at least was the first to publish it in a manuscript that has survived in time. I think sort of that discovery, even if it's just a philosophical discovery without evidence, I think was important. This whole idea of the atomic structure of mass. So that's definitely one of the most important discoveries. What's another important discovery besides the atom? I say the most important discovery, here's the reason why. It's because it's the foundational concept. You can't really have science unless you have atoms. You can't have chemical reactions. I mean, where does physics and chemistry go without atoms? Where does biology go without atoms? You sort of need to think of the world in the sense of it being made of building blocks before you can get started doing anything. And that's why I think it's so important. Yeah, atoms. Well, another discovery, I guess, would be language. I have I don't know why it took human culture so long to develop a sort of a technological, not just develop technologically, but, why are we the industrial revolution only happened 200 years ago is something that confounds me, especially when, the Romans had the buildings of Rome and Greece, and even the Egyptians had the pyramids and their irrigation systems. Why did it take so long? I mean, why did it take 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years for technology to develop? I mean, I even think about like the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and even the Stone Age. Even you would think that human beings would have driven technology further and further. I guess it never got off the ground, and it took thousands and thousands and thousands of years to get off the ground, mainly because, the transmission of that information never made it from generation to generation. I guess people were always so young that once they learned the rudiments of something, they were too busy with their own survival that they didn't make any technological advancements. So not only were they lucky to get passed on information like about the technology of tools, but they didn't have time to develop that technology or something. I'm not sure. Maybe they didn't have the culture or language transmission or the ability to write down that information on paper or something like that. Maybe writing. So there must be some connection with language and writing to technology that sort of drove the technological revolutions that we're having now. I would have loved the technological revolution to have occurred 10,000 years ago. Why it had to happen just 200 years ago is really a tragedy. Think of all the lives lost. because technology didn't advance at the pace it ought to have advanced, in my mind. I mean, yeah. So anyway, so my guess is about the most important discoveries are, number one, the atomic understanding of the world, and I guess number two, language and writing. I don't know how to thoroughly separate language and writing. Like, there's verbal languaging and then written language. They're very tightly related to one another, and so I'm just going to sort of combine them into one. Language and writing. Okay, what's the next question? Question number 217. Who is your favorite comic? Okay. Well, my favorite comic, I like, I used to like, what's his name? C.K. Lewis? C.J.? C.K. C.K. Lewis? What is his name? I think it's C.K. Louis. It's been a while. He's kind of been out of the press lately, for various reasons. And I also really like Seinfeld. And then there's another guy who I really like. His mind does not come to mind. It's been a while since I went to a comedy club. I went to a comedy club, I think, last summer. And maybe that was about 4 months ago, 5 months ago. So it's been a while. But I really do like to see comedy shows and comedians and comics up on stage. And I just haven't been to one lately. And I need to, the thing about it too is I've actually, I've had some good experiences seeing comics in certain venues, and I've had some not so good experiences too. So it's sort of like a 50-50. You don't know whether you're going to really enjoy yourself or not. Here's the problem. Part of the problem is today's cultural climate really inhibits that kind of free thinking and crazy thinking. I mean, there are a lot of restrictions now in culture about how one can express themselves. Lots of rules, and that is, I think, cutting into the comedy game somehow. And I'm really glad that I'm not a comic, because that sounds like a really tough line of work. Because you sort of have to play with all the cultural shifts, and that's basically why you've essentially got to be a genius. You really do have to be genius level communicator to be a successful communicator, to be a successful comic, I think. Robin Williams was a freaking genius. I'm convinced that even Seinfeld is quite genius. And, all the big comics, C.K. Lewis, if that's his name, is no doubt a genius as well. And, it just takes a lot of intelligence to be able to navigate in those waters when you're pushing people's edges, right, at a comedy show. Okay, next question. The question is, do you follow any rituals or are you spontaneous? Okay. Well, that is a question that cannot be answered. Both. I follow rituals, like daily rituals of getting ready for work, and I'm also somewhat spontaneous too, so I'm both. Question number 219, do you have a big ego? That's an interesting question. Do I have a big ego? No, I certainly don't present myself as a person who has a big ego. In fact, the smaller ego that a person has, I think the more effective they can be in social situations. Question number 220, do you wear hats? Yeah, I wear hats. Now, I don't. The kinds of hats I wear are knit hats. And I have been known to wear caps, like baseball caps, but not baseball caps. I'm wearing sporty caps. Personally, I don't find the conventional baseball cap to be attractive in any way, shape, or form. I just don't wear, the typical baseball cap with the panels up front and sort of the netting in the back with in the bill. The full bill is just something that I don't wear. I don't wear that kind of cap. I just don't think it's fashionable. I wear caps that tend to be sort of not a full dome, but a partial dome, that are more sporty in design. The one that I wear a lot, I've gotten from REI, and it actually folds up, and it's a fairly neutral color, and I really like it. And it's quite effective at blocking out the sun. And it's a lighter cap. It's a sporty cap. It's not a baseball cap. Next question. Oh, there's also, I want to say more about, do I wear hats? I wear hats for fun. I recognized recently that wearing hats can really be a game changer when it comes to presenting yourself and signaling others. Like I can see just across the room, I've got a magic hat, a wizard's hat, a wizard's pointy cap, which I've demonstrated to you a couple days ago. I also have a pirate cap that's a fun pirate cap, a pirate hat, and then I also have a Robin Hood hat. I find that wearing hats can be a lot of fun, can add some whimsy and fantasy to a social situation, and so I do like wearing hats. And the kinds of hats I wear are like the sporty hats, the knit hats for warmth. Got to have a knit hat for warmth. And then I also wear sort of fantasy hats related to, costume and things like that. So those are the 3 types of hats that I wear. Question number 221. Do I eat fast food? Yes, I do. It's hard to avoid eating fast food in the world today. Do I eat a lot of it? No. In fact, just yesterday I was thinking that I was a little hungry, that I wanted something to eat, and I was looking at the restaurants as I was driving by on Highway 101. And I thought to myself, I have no reason to go to a McDonald's and no reason to go to a Taco Bell. I was thinking maybe I'd go to a Carl's Jr., but here's the thing. Food in those places is, in my opinion, fairly low quality. And so now I'll eat there in a pinch if I have to. And it's funny, even like an In-N-Out burger, which has a lot of fame regarding the quality of its food, in my opinion, I just don't care for it. If I'm struggling for a place to eat, sure, I'll drive into a Denny's and I'll eat at a IHOP or something like that, or Chili's. But these are not, I do not ever really make it up I do not necessarily intend to go out and eat those places. Now, I will make an exception. For example, I will make an exception for like a pizza joint. It's not, I typically don't eat a lot of pizza at home. I pretty much cook my meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home every day, right? And so there are some foods that I just tend not to make that often. Pizza is one of them. And so typically if I have pizza, it's a pizza that I've purchased at a restaurant of some kind, and often a fast food restaurant. Like a Blaze is a pizza joint that I'm enjoying right now. They've got a lot of vegan options, and I appreciate that because I like pizza. What's not to like about pizza? And so that's something I'll make an exception for, and I'll eat at a fast food restaurant to have. But most of the time, and I would say 95% of the time, I am not eating at restaurants. Now, if I am out and I want some food, what I'll do is I'll just drive to a grocery store. And if I want some food, I'll get one of those portable salads, those individual salads, or what I'll do too is I'll get a can of soup. Amy's is a brand that has a lot of great organic soups that are vegan. And I really appreciate those soups. They're really tasty, hearty, filling, nutritious, and in my opinion, really good, high quality food. So, soup and salads, including I like juice that I can get at grocery stores. So, those are often quite enjoyable. So, that's what I find myself doing most of the time. I would say 80% of the time when I'm out and trying to get food, I will stop into a grocery store and get it there. I will not stop at a burger joint or some kind of fast food place to get food. I just don't think that the food in those places is very good. Next slide. Question number 222. What is your favorite fast or junk food chain? Golly. I guess right now, it's Blaze Pizza. That's my favorite right now. Now, here's the problem with getting pizzas there. They're often quite big, right? They are a lot of calories. So if I don't find a Blaze, then maybe I'll find a place where I can have food with fewer calories in it. I guess from a fast food perspective only, that might be a Carl's Jr. You know, I think they've got, sometimes they're combined with the Green Burrito restaurant. And so, I can ask them for like a burrito with rice and beans or something like that. And that can be pretty satisfying. Next question. What do you think of when you wake up? That's a good question. Well, I think the first thing I think of quite often is I'm trying to think of my plan for the day. What am I supposed to be doing? What's coming next? Should I get out of bed right now? I'm still alive. I'm grateful that I'm still alive, and I'm just doing like body checks to see that I'm okay. Like, do I have any body parts that are sore? Any muscles? Any sore joints? And happily, I pretty much never have any soreness in the morning, but I am kind of slow sometimes. Although, now that I think about it, after a workout, yeah, I'll probably be sore here and there. What is the next question? Question number 224. What do you think of when you go to bed? Well, I try to think of it almost as little as possible because, I want to get some sleep. And nighttime is my allotted time to get that rest. And if I make myself restless, emotionally restless, I know that I'll have trouble falling asleep. So I try to keep my thoughts really calm. I try to visualize environments that are relaxing, like ocean, beaches, and wide open valleys, and even deserts. I try to think of just environments that are relaxing. And sometimes I'll even also go over things that I've enjoyed that previous day. The stuff that I like, the stuff that I anticipate for tomorrow, things like that. So anyway, I'm going to start wrapping it up. I just want to say, Emily, thank you for spending some time with me today and clicking on the link and getting to know a little bit more about your dad. And I hope you have a wonderful day today, a wonderful weekend. Enjoy that last hour of sunlight that we have today that we will lose tomorrow because daylight savings time is going away. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'm looking forward, along with you perhaps, for Thanksgiving. And, I'll communicate with you in the future using electronic means. Maybe we can engage in activities together by exchanging photographs or drawings or any kind of exchanges. I'd be open to those so that we can connect in meaningful ways over the next few weeks and years. All right? I love you, girl. I love you just the way you are. And, I have respect and regard for who you are as a person, as you individuate and live your self-determined life. And I'm a supporter of that, and in a very significant way.